keep wanting to say Happy Monday, but where's that? Exactly. Happy Thursday, right? Hope you all enjoyed your day off. If you had a Eid meal, I hope it was plentiful. If you didn't have an Eid meal, I also hope it was plentiful. In a short while, we will be joined by our friend Kani Wignaraja, the UN Development Program's Regional Director for Asia. She will be here to brief you on the situation in Myanmar. UNDP just released its socioeconomic outlook for Myanmar, which is not good. Today, the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, delivered a keynote address at the Global Gateway High-Level Education Forum in Brussels. She emphasized that with no major education events being convened in Paris, New York, or Fortaleza in 2024, it's time to strengthen support for countries on SDG 4 and education transformation, especially on digital learning, education, financing, teacher skills, and country-level collaboration as we approach the Transforming Education Summit's two-year anniversary. Also today, the Deputy Secretary General met with Haja Labib, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Belgium. They discussed a number of issues, including Belgium's cooperation with the United Nations, forthcoming milestones such as the Summit of the Future, as well as the situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Yesterday, she attended the Spotlight Initiative's governing body meeting. She highlighted that 7 years into this partnership, it is evident that comprehensive, large-scale investment in ending violence against women holds immense potential. Also yesterday, she participated in the 4th annual EU-UN Strategic Dialogue on Sustainable Development, where she addressed various topics, including the Summit of the Future, the reforming of the international financial architecture, and the collaboration on digitalization and skills for the future. The Deputy Secretary General also held bilateral meetings with senior Belgium and EU officials, as well as major stakeholders on the education issue. She will be back in New York City later today. A couple of updates on Gaza and the OPT, which covered today and yesterday. Martin Griffiths, the Emergency Relief Coordinator, met yesterday virtually with the heads of the World Food Program, Cindy McCain, UNICEF, Catherine Russell, the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros, and the Special Humanitarian and Reconstruction Coordinator for the UN, Sigrid Kaag, as well as Jamie McGoldrick, the acting resident and humanitarian coordinator for the OPT, and the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini. Mr. Griffiths said that the United Nations welcomes all efforts to increase the amount and type of aid delivered for the people of Gaza, whether by air, by sea, or most importantly, by land. We trust that no effort will be spared to ensure that aid reaches those who need it across the Gaza Strip, including in the northern part, and that the safety of our aid workers and of civilians remains paramount, and that the independence of our humanitarian operations be maintained. We will continue to work with all those committed to alleviating the humanitarian suffering in Gaza and to advocate for the principled and safe aid delivery. That is our commitment and obligations to our teams and to our people. Yesterday, a United Nations team carried out an assessment mission in Khan Yunis following the withdrawal of Israeli troops from that part of southern Gaza. Our team reported widespread destruction. Every building they visited and most of those they were able to see had been damaged, and paved roads had been reduced to dirt tracks. The team inspected a United Nations warehouse, 4 medical centers, and 8 schools. They saw very significant just damage in all but one of those structures. Street and public spaces in Khan Yunis are littered with unexploded ordnance, posing severe risks to civilians, especially for children. And the team found unexploded 1,000-pound bomb lying on the main intersection and inside schools. Residents who returned to the area and some who remained during the fighting told the team about the dire shortages of food and water and the loss of critical health services due to the destruction of Al Nasser and Al Amal Hospital. Colleagues from across the humanitarian system participated in that mission. After this briefing, Also, I would encourage you to take a look at the OCHA website, which has some photos that documented the mission's findings. Also to note, on Tuesday, the humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, Jamie McGoldrick, was also in Khan Yunis, where he visited an UNRWA school that is now sheltering thousands of people. He said the community there needs more supplies and support, including food, water, health, sanitation assistance. Yesterday, Mr. McGoldrick represented the humanitarian community in a meeting with the Southern Command of the Israeli Defense Forces, as well as COGAT, the Israeli body responsible for the flow of aid and coordination in Gaza. Mr. McGoldrick presented a list of requests of what is needed for the UN and our humanitarian partners to be able to deliver assistance safely, to deliver it effectively, and at the necessary scale throughout Gaza. Meanwhile, UNICEF reported that yesterday one of its vehicles was hit by, they reported yesterday that one of their vehicles was hit by live ammunition on Tuesday while waiting to enter northern Gaza. The agency said the incident had been raised with relevant Israeli authorities. Moving to the north, I know the issue of the investigation into the explosion that took place at the end of March, in which three UN observers and one language assistant were wounded. If you'll recall, that incident took place on March 30th. The investigation by the UN is ongoing. However, preliminary findings indicate that the explosion was caused by a landmine. You will recall that I can also, tell you that we are deeply concerned with the repeated exchanges of fire across the blue line since 8 October, and all of those are in breach of Security Council Resolution 1701. We reiterate our call for these to stop. Turning to Haiti, the World Food Program said today it is ramping up food assistance in the country, but warns that its food stocks may run out by the end of this month. WFP is only enough food in the country to feed 175,000 people for 1 month. And the closure of Haiti's main port and airport about a month ago has also, of course, disrupted the flow of aid coming into Haiti. As we've been telling you since the start of the current crisis, WFP has reached more than 500,000 people with emergency assistance, including hot meals for people living in temporary shelters in the Port-au-Prince area. They've also provided cash assistance and school meals in the outlying provinces. Meanwhile, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that gang violence is disrupting access to health care for Haitians in Port-au-Prince. The Haiti State University Hospital has remained closed since March 30th, while La Paix University Hospital, the largest functioning public hospital, is of course overwhelmed. Personnel and ambulances also have difficulty accessing areas that are controlled by these armed gangs. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization, the UN Population Fund, also continue to support hospitals with equipment and medicines. Since March 1st, UNICEF, the International Organization for Migration, and their partners have delivered more than 4.5 million liters of drinking water at 29 sites across the capital. And as you know, the $674 million humanitarian response plan for Haiti is severely underfunded, with just 7% of the money being in the bank. Turning to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, our peacekeeping colleagues tell us that the Blue Helmets responded to an alert this morning about shots fired by Codeco combatants near the area of Tata Hill in Ituri province. The peacekeepers established a presence in the area, including between a hospital and the local church and market, to deter further threats. Together with the Congolese armed forces, the mission fired warning shots and eventually exchanged fire, which led to the Codeco combatants withdrawing from the area. The mission continues to monitor the situation. And in Sudan, as you may know, this coming Monday marks 1 year since the start of the devastating conflict that impacted the lives of millions of men, women, and children in Sudan, and of course has a rolling impact on countries in the region. On Monday, the Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Joyce Msuya, will be in Paris alongside other UN officials attending the Humanitarian Conference for Sudan and its neighbors. France and Germany and the European Union will be co-hosting. Ms. Msuya will address the conference and advocate for scaled-up resources to expand our operations in Sudan and in the region as a whole. She will also advocate for improved humanitarian access so that agencies can ensure the timely delivery of life-saving communities in need. And the Secretary General will have a video message for that conference. Also tomorrow we have the noon briefing. We will have two guests to discuss the situation in Sudan. That will be the humanitarian coordinator for Sudan, Clementine Nkweta Salami, and she will be joined by Michael Dunford, the regional director for East Africa for the World Food Program. And as deadly hostilities enter a second year, the UN fact-finding mission on Sudan released some heartbreaking figures, saying that the fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces has killed thousands of civilians since it began on April 15th last year. Over 6 million men, women, and children have been displaced internally, while almost 2 million refugees have fled neighboring countries. Nearly 24 million people are in need of humanitarian help. Turning to Ukraine, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that yet another set of deadly attacks yesterday and today in Kharkiv, in Odessa, and the Donetsk region. According to local authorities, civilians were killed, including several children. Humanitarian partners on the ground say that energy infrastructure was also damaged after attacks in Odessa, in Kharkiv, in Zaporizhzhia, in Lviv, in Kyiv regions. In Kharkiv and Kyiv, families were left with no access to electricity due to these attacks. Humanitarian are mobilized and continue to provide emergency assistance, complementing the efforts of National Rescue and Municipal Services. This morning, the Security Council held a meeting on the maintenance of peace and security in Ukraine. Briefing was Miroslav Yencha, the Assistant Secretary General in the office, in the Department of Political and Peace Building Affairs. He said that we are appalled by the increase in civilian casualties as a result of relentless attacks in Ukraine. It is particularly disturbing that at least 57 children were killed or injured in March alone, doubling the number from February. He added that we're also witnessing hostilities spreading across Ukraine's border with regular cross-border strikes into the Russian Federation. And also briefing was Edem Wusornu, the Director of Operations and Advocacy at OCHA. She said that we remain deeply concerned by the lack of humanitarian access to parts of Donetsk, Kherson, and Luhansk, and Zaporizhzhia regions, which are occupied by the Russian Federation, and that at least 1.5 million people need humanitarian assistance in those areas alone. She also, I just want to add that on Monday afternoon, IAEA Director Rafael Grossi will be in the building. He will be briefing Security Council members in the afternoon, and they have told us that he will be at the stakeout on Monday afternoon, likely around 5 p.m. And also, sad note, to say that our colleagues at the UN Refugee Agency are deeply saddened by the news of a shipwreck that happened yesterday in the Aegean Sea, where 3 young girls aged 5 to 10 years old were reported dead off Chios Island in Greece. UNHCR said that today there was another terrible shipwreck near Lampedusa, where 9 people are confirmed dead. This is a reminder of the dangers that refugees and migrants face every day in the hands of smugglers as they seek a better life. Finally, 2 more member states, which means we've hit a century. That means we have 100. Okay, just checking. Yeah, you got that. Good. Latest 2 send us checks. Both countries happen to be landlocked. Give you a hint. One of those countries belongs to the OSCE, and the other one to SADC. More hints. Shaja is the national dish of one country. No, I think that's the OSCE country. And, or maybe not, I don't, it's a good question. And zima is a traditional soup in the other. Okay, Zimbabwe is? Okay, there you go. You won Zimbabwe, and the other one? I got my soups all mixed up. Moldova. We thank our friends in Chisinau. Okay. Anade, you played, you risked, you won. Okay, well, all right. Well, if you, Amélie,
I have several questions. First, on Haiti, you said WFP would run out of food by the end of the month. Is it a question only of money, or is it a question of taking the food in? And in this regard, how is the airlift thing going on then?
that's a very, very good question. And when I say that, that means I don't have the answer to it. So I will try to get back to you on the WFP issue.
Okay. On Haiti, more largely, it's been a month now that since Prime Minister Ariel Henry announced that he would resign, but there's still no transition security council. So is there a message from the Secretary General 1 month after this, what was seen as a step forward?
Well, I mean, we're encouraged by what has been achieved, but obviously I think it's critical that all Haitian stakeholders, political stakeholders, continue to make progress and move towards an inclusive political transition in Haiti, including, by the appointment of women to decision-making positions.
I have a last one, sorry. On Mali,
Yep.
the junta announced yesterday that they are banning the activity of all political parties, and this morning they banned all media to cover political parties. Any comment from the Secretary General?
These are concerning developments, both on the political end and on the freedom of the press. I would also encourage you to look at what the High Commissioner for Refugees said on that issue. Margaret, then Deji, then Anade. I know, but that's the way it goes.
Thanks. You mentioned Mr. McGoldrick presented the Israelis with a list of what's needed to distribute aid inside Gaza. What is on the list?
Well, the list is what we've been calling for, basically, is improved access, better security coordination, safe passage, all of these things that we've been talking about.
On OIOS, we haven't heard an update from you in a while. Any progress on their UNRWA investigation?
It's moving through the pipeline. Deji.
Does Anade have a question?
I get to do one thing here, and that's to choose who asks me a question.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay, then. Several questions. First, we haven't heard about Ms. Sigrid Kaag for a while. Is
You
there
just
any-
heard about her. I
Oh,
literally
sorry, no,
just
no.
mentioned her name.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
So,
Okay.
I mean, I haven't, not in the last
Okay.
6 minutes, but go ahead.
Okay. My second question here. I believe you've already seen this news that Hamas told the negotiators that it might not have 40 hostages for the first phase to exchange for the ceasefire. How worried does the UN
Look,
of the condition of those hostages?
We're seeing a lot of ink poured in many places on what may be or may not be going on the negotiations. We are not a direct party to these talks, so I can't assess these statements that are being reported in the press. What we do know is that we want to see as quickly as possible an agreement for a humanitarian ceasefire to get more aid in, to stop the suffering of the people of Gaza and to see all the hostages released. Anade, and then Madame.
Thank you, Steph.
Senora.
We're hearing reports that the Mexican Foreign Ministry may ask the UN to suspend Ecuador's UN membership for violations to the Vienna Convention. Is there a precedent for such a move, and what is the UN reaction?
Well, I have not yet seen a letter from the Mexican authorities to the Secretary General on just the issue of membership being suspended. It's outlined in the charter. It's an issue for member states to decide. we do very much hope that the tensions between Ecuador and Mexico are dealt with through dialogue, and I think we've expressed our condemnation at the blatant violations of international law that we saw when the embassy was stormed, or whatever term you want to use.
Thank you.
Evelyn, then Stéphane.
Thank you, Stéphane. Do you know if any schools are still operating in Gaza, UNRWA, or anyone else?
My understanding is that there are no formal schools operating. Whether or not UNRWA is managing to do some education in certain places in the south where it still operates, I think something you need to check with them. But basically, we have seen the education of so many children suspended, and we know the kind of impact that that has. Stefano.
Thank you, Stéphane. The Iran mission here at the UN say basically that the imperative for Iran to retaliate for the attack of its embassy in Damascus might have been avoided had the UN Security Council condemned the strike. What the Secretary General think about that?
The Security Council does and says what it does and say, and
No, but what I mean-
I think we have been very clear in the Secretary General's position on the need for the Vienna Convention to be respected, for embassies and consulates to be respected.
But if Iran attacks Israel as a retaliation, does the Secretary General think that this is justified?
The Secretary General does not want to see any violence. He does not want to see any further escalation of a situation which has already escalated quite a bit in the last 6 months. Margaret.
Just one more, Steph. Yesterday on Capitol Hill, there was a hearing in the House Foreign Relations Committee about China's influence at the United Nations, and a couple of the experts kind of lobbed a few at the Secretary General. One is that that the Chinese provide the UN with $20 million a year as part of their SDG funding, and they're saying that, the expert was saying that half of that, $10 million, goes into, quote, a slush fund for the Secretary General that he uses for special pet projects of his own that he can't get through the regular budget.
If you'll recall, a number of years ago, I think President Xi was here and announced the creation of a SDG fund. All of that is very transparent and being reported back publicly.
One more, and one of the congressmen also criticized the Secretary General for not speaking out enough on human rights issues in China, particularly to President Xi. Do you have any response?
It is important for anyone to listen carefully to what the Secretary General says, the readouts of his meeting, his speeches, and I think he has been very consistent and vocal on human rights violations when he sees them in every country from 1 to 193. Mike, and then I think we'll go to our guest.
David Satterfield gave a briefing yesterday in which he said that the biggest obstacle now that there's a larger flow of humanitarian aid going into Gaza is enough trucks to make it happen. And he mentioned that the UN and other international organizations are now working on this project to contract trucks in the region.
Well, I mean, we first of all, I think the biggest obstacle remains that the conflict is ongoing, like that we don't have a humanitarian
logistical.
ceasefire. No,
yeah.
but exactly. No, we have been talking about trucks for a long time, and the challenge is that, as we've said, that there is trucks go through the crossing. They then the goods have to be offloaded onto smaller trucks. There are not enough trucks in Gaza, right, to meet the needs. Whatever we can do to bring more in, we are trying to do, but that also involves cooperation with all the parties involved. And there's also the issue of, you can have trucks, but if they can't go anywhere, and they can't go to the north, and they can't go to other places they need to go. That's also a challenge.
I mean, what kind of cost are we talking about, and who's bearing the cost? for the-
I don't. I can try to give you. I don't have a cost estimate. Okay, Abdelhamid, Linda, and then we will really go to our guest.
Well, thank you, Stéphane. Yesterday morning, on the morning of the Eid, Israel targeted the 3 children of Ismail Haniya and their grandchildren, killing all of them. Some of them are as young as few years old. I haven't heard any statement from any UN official about that. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Look,
correct me if there
we
was.
have. I think we have spoken out clearly since the beginning of this conflict, highlighting the toll that children are bearing in a overwhelming way in this conflict.
But nothing on this incident in particular.
I have no more details on it than what's been seen in the media, and I think I've answered it. Linda.
Thank you, Steph. This is going back to the hostages. I mean, now obviously there are all kinds of reports coming out that the U.S. and Israel are privately saying they think most of the hostages are dead. I know you started with this. I was just wondering if the UN or the SG has heard, anything about this, or how much information the
No,
UN
I mean I
has
think we're
about-
all suffering from lack of information. First and foremost, the families, but we have also been advocating for visits by the International Committee of the Red Cross, which in these kinds of situations is a vital conduit for information. That has not happened, so we have no way to know anything more than what's being told in the press.
And I just have one more question, another issue regarding, the Palestinian bid to become full membership. I was just looking at the UN Charter, and you may have discussed this in other days, but Article 4 states that the UN is open to all peace-loving states. I don't want to get into whether peace-loving or not, but it says states seeking membership submit the application to the SG. So what does that really mean since the Palestinians are not, don't represent a state yet?
It means there was a letter that came from Palestine, and it was sent to the Security Council, and the Security Council Membership Committee is now looking at that as it should, as per the procedures. Okay, thank you. I'll be right back.